Ah,
Hello and welcome to Genius Teatime with Sable Mensah. Thank you so much for joining me. This is amazing.
oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be in this space with you.
This will be terrific. So, Sable, in her own words, is a speaker and advocate dedicated to guiding people through the intersections of trauma, identity, and personal liberation. As an unapologetic Black queer woman and a survivor, she dismantles the perfect survivor myth through her podcast Full Out Healing and her signature talks. And her work is a call to action for survivors to thrive without apology and for communities to cultivate a world where wholeness and freedom are possible for everyone. How awesome is that? Oh, and
Yeah.
today what we'll be doing is helping to support Free From, which is part of how we met. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how we met?
Yes. I feel like we had the privilege of being in one of I think we were in the inaugural group, right? For My Next Steps, which is sort of like it was like a 12-week, I don't want to call it like a class or a cohort because it was, come when you can. There's no pressure, but it was sort of like financial education for survivors, like through the lens of survivorship, through the lens of you have experienced this thing that has been disruptive and not on your terms. And here is how all of these sort of traditional financial aspects of your financial life can relate to you in this space, which, I was just blown away. Like, it wasn't just about the knowledge, though the knowledge was helpful, especially in this context. Because honestly, I knew a lot of the stuff, but not as where I was in my life, you know? But I just found the power of it was just talking to other survivors and being witnessed around like how surviving abuse impacted our finances and our options. And I know for me, I spoke about how it impacted my sense of worthiness and the shame I had. And it is like money is a hard topic in general. Throw surviving on it. Oof. So that's how we met.
It
Or that's our
was
meet cute.
it was it was such an intense and beautiful experience,
Yeah.
honestly, because I realized that I was looking at it at first because I've had so much of it more subtly in my relationships later,
Mhm.
really strongly in my early formative years with my folks.
Mhm.
And some of it's like, wow, how much of that relates to how you deal with the rest of the world and how impactful it's been and
Yes.
often damaging it's been to
Yes.
how I am maneuvering the world. And I'm like, okay, such a good topic to have and to really
Truly.
go into.
Yeah. And to your point, I wasn't expecting for my understanding of what financial abuse was and how I experienced it to change. But like I being there helped me realize, oh my God, like this financial abuse, it existed, it was far more pervasive, started way earlier, and it just sort of exposed the umbrella of it all, which helped me release a lot of shame and like an inappropriate amount of ownership for how things turned out. It was like, oh, like it started way back when. No wonder why this feels so damn hard to move past, So I really appreciated the reframe. I wasn't expecting or prepared for, but I'm grateful to have had it.
It was really intense, and I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
were there.
Yeah.
And then we ended up meeting each other at the Survivor Wealth Summit
I
in
know.
person, which was super
That,
cool.
yeah, that was awesome. Do we have a picture? I hope so.
I feel like there's one somewhere, but
Yeah,
I
we gotta
don't.
find it.
We'll have to find it.
Mhm.
But I'm so grateful that you wanted to go and be part of this to talk about the myth of the perfect survivor. And
Mhm.
how have you been exploring this in your practice and personally, you know?
Yeah. Well, the sort of the idea of the myth of the perfect survivor came up for me, after attending several different support groups, several different things for survivors and noticing a trend that even the people who I thought would count as perfect survivors, even they felt like imposters to their experience. And that's when I was like, hold on, there's a conspiracy happening here. Like it doesn't it doesn't make sense. And I think I started to recognize and understand that the just sort of this idea of like there is a perfect way to be a survivor, there's a perfect way to be a victim. And not only that, all of these things are attached to achieving this phantom level of perfectness: compassion, empathy, resources, self-forgiveness, all of that. And so I when I started to recognize, okay, this is a conspiracy and no one gets it, it really helped me sort of forgive myself for other things. And that's when I sort of as it started to click for me, I was like, I think I have to just share what I think about it. And so it shows up in my work. I've also, not only that, Laura, have been surprised by how much this has resonated because I just say it off the cuff, like, oh yeah, that's the perfect survivor myth. And then there's a pause, like, or oh. And I'm like, okay, this is touching on something that means something to people. And I've like again mentioning it off the cuff, not realizing the resonance it had, but connecting with people who work with survivors and they're like, that's what that's called. Like that when people sort of don't get it or have an impatience around like working with them, like there's that invisible thing that's functioning. And so it's not what I expected, but my work is starting to include, providing workshops around this concept of the perfect survivor for people who work with survivors. That's just the beginning. Like I didn't even imagine that for myself. It just sort of presented itself. But that's sort of where that's just never a place I would have thought that needed, but it's there, which tells me how deep and how pervasive it is. Um, Personally, um, you know, the amount, when I first realized that I was a survivor, um, and I really first came to terms with that what I was experiencing was abuse. One of my first thoughts was, well, one of the reasons why I resisted it, not only because it wasn't safe to acknowledge, but part of me was like, well, I can't be a feminist if this is happening to me. That was one of my literal thoughts. And what's crazy is I never would ever judge any other human on planet Earth that way, but that's sort of what I had ready for myself. So, you know, understanding the perfect survivor, it's really helped me be so much kinder to myself and forgive myself for experiencing this, for letting it go so long, all those type of things. Yeah.
It's all that. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's just real talk. But I would love it if you wouldn't mind, for people who might not be familiar with it, what do you feel like some of the hallmarks of that myth are? Like, what are we supposed to be as survivors?
Hmm. Yes, great question. Survivors are supposed to leave the first time. Survivors are supposed to not care about the people who are harming them. Survivors, they're supposed to, not make money. They're supposed to not have traveled or be educated. Survivors are, they're the perfect survivor is someone who has never ever had an opportunity to technically walk away. Because, well, if you had the key to the door and you can unlock it, why didn't you leave? You know?
Mm.
Yeah, and it's tied to all these other sort of judgments. The perfect survivor, it's a condition that makes, if you don't meet the condition, then that is proof that what you experience is your fault in some way, shape, or form. That's,
Ouch.
yeah.
It's so much. This is it just is giving, well,
Mhm.
what were you wearing?
Exactly. Exactly. It's very much that.
And that's like this is really a hard one because of course we would you do this to anyone else? No. Do we do it to ourselves? All the time.
All the time. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of wild, but a lot of our systems of support for a survivor, even the criminal justice system, is built on this notion of the perfect survivor, right? Because they get off the hook. Like there's so many things you have to do in order to prove what happened to you happened. And if you didn't act in these specific ways, if your which is coded for, if your trauma response did not look like this, if if you did not ignore all the invisible threats you perceive in your life in society, which are real, then fine. I guess we'll do something to help you. Maybe. But actually you need proof of harm first.
Yeah,
So,
so much
yeah.
so
Yeah.
much of it I looked at those and like, okay, so your perfect survivor is dead.
Yeah. Literally. And is Dead is the subject of a true crime documentary that's fun and engaging to watch, that people can yell at, why didn't you this? Why didn't you that? And I feel like that even, I think the myth of the perfect survivor works for society right now, right? Because we can coexist with this horrible, awful thing. And not only can we coexist with it, more importantly, we can coexist with whether our complicitness in it. We can coexist with, um, we can, it allows individuals and institutions to have a self concept that, you know, they can live with. We're not terrible people because, well, so and so, what could we have done? And so I think, and that's sort of like the like true crime documentaries and stuff like that. I feel like they're all built off of that. I don't think I've ever seen any that frames any of what people, like survivors and victims in their stories, experience. They almost never frame it as domestic violence or partner abuse ever. It's like this one unhinged person with mental health issues, and oh, because she had daddy issues or because of this, that, or the other, it was bound to always be trapped. And I call BS, because, having a trauma and having that wound impact you is a human experience. All humans have it. And it doesn't mean that you deserved it. It doesn't mean that you asked for it. It means you were a human on this earth and you're trying to figure it out. And I just don't think that makes it a condition to like prove that nothing could have ever been done. I don't buy it.
Of course not. I mean, it's preposterous, really. We don't,
Mhm.
of course, things
Yes.
happen to you. This is like denying that you're getting old.
Hmm. Yeah, literally, it's human. It's human. And I think there's sort of a comfort in thinking that only certain types of humans, only if there's a comfort in knowing, like, well, if that's something that they did, I can protect myself by just not doing that, you know? And it's a false comfort. It's not true, but it's there.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, the Dean the foster dog has opinions.
uh,
There are squirrels outside and we should talk about them. Let's
yes.
talk about squirrels.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, it's real. And that, no, things do happen. And I know that I personally have been in situations where I'm like, why didn't I leave that? But you
Hmm.
start recognizing the more you
Yeah.
look at it, it's like, wow, that was also my relationships with my work. And that
Yeah.
was relationships with certain bosses. And that It's
Yep.
like, wow, this is pervasive and ugly and happening all over.
Yes. Yes. And there is a power to recognizing that because until you do, and I'll speak for myself, until I was able to notice that like I my capacity to register a red flag was really hard when I was in the Red Sea. Like my capacity to understand that I was unsafe was really hard because I'd never experienced safety. Like when you kind of zoom in on that, there's just more. I found room to forgive myself, and that's the terrible thing about the myth of the perfect survivor. It's not only society has it, I had internalized it too. And while I had internalized it, I really judged myself in ways that was so debilitating, shame inducing, isolating, and it kept me believing that there was such thing as a perfect survivor and knowing that I wasn't it. It just kept my world small, you know? And it just felt hard, if not impossible, to ever imagine me having my life back because I didn't think I could survive the shame of not being a perfect survivor. Like I thought it was a social death and like I literally didn't want to be seen or look in the mirror because I believed that.
So painful and so
Mhm.
real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. First off, I'm really glad you're out here and I'm really glad you're being seen because
Yeah.
you absolutely deserve it. But also, this is just a really rough one. I think that a lot of people don't discuss about how much of it ends up getting hidden
Mhm.
because of this shame.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it's why the shame is such a silent deadly killer. And I think that's why I eventually decided my I have to share my story. I have to share my insights because this is, as much as I know it's a gift to the world, it's a gift to myself and the little Sable that knows that this shame doesn't belong to us and it's not going to kill us. Like I felt like it was almost a dark cloud that would just follow me until it was out the way. And that's kind of it. And it was so significant that it impacted my finances because when I got out, like I left. I also like to think about or talk about intimate partner violence as sort of like a two-person cult in the sense that you physically leave but still need to be deprogrammed, so to speak, right? And I left with all of the narratives that normalized the chaos that I was experiencing. And in that time period where I had just gotten out and was trying to figure out what to do, I just felt like I had no options because everything that I thought was okay or wanted to pursue, my ex had there was a problem with it. There was something that proved something that made me wrong or evil or whatever. And so it really limited my sense of options and opportunity and ability to support myself. And I literally, I just had to confront that belief and decide, do I want to keep this or not? Um, because I it was that or continue to stay in this really uncomfortable, unstable place, you know?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you did. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't really discuss how difficult it is because
Mhm,
this sort of abuse is pervasive and it isn't
mhm.
necessarily fast.
Yes,
So
not.
it can start in childhood, but it can
Yeah.
also where you're trained to
Mhm,
realize that you don't deserve anything, but
mhm,
also it can progress in very subtle ways and
mhm,
that can start eating away at your self-conscious, at your conscience, at your self-confidence, at your who you are as a person,
mhm.
and regaining that can take a long time.
Yes. It can take such a long time because, you mentioned that it's so gradual. And I look back at my own story and realized, oh, it was gradual for me too. And the impact it had on my career was gradual as well. And like my visibility was gradual as well. So when I made that connection and realized that, I became so embarrassed. I was like, how could I let this impact me professionally? Like it triggered a narrative of like, I'm so unreliable, I'm so untrustworthy. And that's what made it hard to find ways to support myself after getting out because I had to kind of break through that wall of judgment and shame and like these false beliefs about who I am as a professional when it's like I survived the wildest most horrendous things and the fact that I'm breathing is great but I didn't it didn't click at the time, which meant that when I got out, I was really, it felt so terrifying to reestablish like professional connections. And I felt like I had to explain my absence or my inconsistency. And, I know I didn't, but that was sort of like the black cloud that was hovering over me. And, eventually I figured out my way. I found people to disclose with. Eventually, I had enough evidence that showed me no one cares. And these stories are just stories that came from the two-person cult, but they're not reality. But, you know, I at the same time I also knew at one point I would have to sort of come out as a survivor for my own freedom from the cloud. Not because I owed anyone that story, but it just felt like the thing I had to move through in order to actually feel free from this.
So important. And
Mhm.
also a really good topic to bring up because I think a lot of people we were just talking about this before we came on about no, I don't think anybody owes you their story
Mhm.
about partner violence, about abuse, about trauma. They don't owe you anything. About your disability.
Yeah.
You don't. You don't owe anybody any of this.
Mhm.
If it is being done for you
Mhm.
to help you further your own life, awesome. That's
Yeah.
actually exactly what needs. But so much of it becomes that I think it feeds right into that. So in the
Mhm.
how can I don't know, I call it trauma porn.
It is. It is. It totally is. And that's why I was blown away by when we went to Summit, because there was a thread of talking about survivor stories without violence, right? Like when people talk about survivors, they want to know all the icky gory details. And like that's not there's so much more to the story. That's like it's just not the most important part of it. We even see it in the movies or in shows like the last episode is they got out, right? And I'm like, no, that's the first episode of my life. Like that is the pilot for my future show is the day I left, you know? Yeah, it's just, ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah, and that's also in many ways not the least interesting, but not nearly as interesting as what
Mhm.
you can become. And that is what I always more interested in trying to say. How can
Yeah.
we make the world a better place? How can we
Mhm.
grow from this and not,
Mhm.
oh, you're only learning from your hardships. That's nonsense. You can learn
Yeah.
from perfectly good experiences too.
Yeah.
Ew.
Truly.
I would like to learn from trips to,
Hmm.
European vacations. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. And Laura, I think that's why survivors often feel isolated because it's like, sort of like in society, where do women after 40 go? I don't know, somewhere to surprise. I don't know. It's like, where do survivors go once they've survived? We don't know. And like, that's another thing that made me feel compelled to start my YouTube show because I wanted stories of survivors like after they left. Like I want to know what is this journey? Like I can only think of two versions of survivors publicly. One is, they're in it and they're just getting out, or maybe they're in crisis mode, or 25 years later, oh, did you know so and so was a survivor? Like, what is the in between? I wanted to know because I felt like I am broiled in this in between. I am trying to rebuild and I feel all of these things, and everything is so hard. And I just want to know how much of it is because of me, how much of this is normal. Is it possible for me to have another life? And the shame of like not being the perfect survivor is another reason why I think even people who have survived and who are many years out like don't necessarily disclose or would even identify. There's like a distancing, which I get. Like their society doesn't make this doesn't create a safe environment to own all aspects of your story. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think survivors owe us that. I've just noticed that I feel like this is an impact of holding this idea of the perfect survivor. It means that it's not safe for anyone at any stage in their journey to like own or disclose or be seen as that.
And that's so unfair, not only to us as survivors, but to anyone.
Yeah.
Come on, we're more than just the we've just escaped, we've
Hmm.
it was in our past, or now you're dead.
Yeah.
We're way more than all of those things. So,
Yes.
but I wanted to talk about, or if you can, about your YouTube series, because you just came off of a marathon.
Yes. Yes. So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I wanted to do something in honor of, in light of that. And so I decided to do a series for that month that basically broke down different aspects of my framework around how I understand intimate partner violence. I mentioned earlier, I think of intimate partner violence as a two-person cult. Um, I also talk about the role that shame plays in healing. I talk about the myth of the perfect survivor, and of course, just my new relationship to fear after having done that whole series because that was terrifying. I was scared every step of the way. And it only stopped being scary when it was done. But I'm excited because that I in that series one, let me see. The scariest part actually wasn't choosing to do it or publishing it. It was sharing it with people and saying, "Hey y'all, I'm doing this thing. Watch." Like that was the most terrifying part. That was the most terrifying part, hands down. Yeah.
Wow. Makes sense, of course.
Hmm.
Because, yes, just doing it, it's like you're on whatever role you're on, and then you're like,
Hmm.
now I have to show it to people.
Hmm. Yep.
Ooh,
Yep. Absolutely. And, I feel like the universe is like, Sable, we need you to cooperate with us. And because, last year, just recording the video was scary. But I did it and I got through it. I had a massive vulnerability hangover. I actually recorded over 30 episodes and then paused for over a little over a year. Um, because I did an episode about um going back after she tried to take my life. And that was something I just had a huge vulnerability hangover because I carried so much shame about that. And at the same time, the moment I decided to do this show, I knew I would always need to do that episode. Like I just knew it was waiting for me. It had to be done. And so I did it and was like, disappeared for about a year. But then I came back, and this series is one of the first things I did as I came back. Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
That's intense.
yeah.
But also, like, both what a gift to you
Mm-hmm.
and what a gift to anybody else trying to actually come out of it. It's like you can come out from the other side
Yes,
of this.
yes.
You can acknowledge it. Wow. This is
Hmm.
what happened.
Yeah.
But your system was so set to
Hmm.
accept that situation that, of
Yeah.
course, you went back. This is what you were used to.
Hmm. And in order to really move through that, I had to tell myself a different story because I had all of this meaning about being that girl or the type of person who did that. And in that, sort of stripped all the nuance away of all the other things that were happening. And as I was carrying the shame about that, I actually forgot that I was done, that things were over. And because, we were married and the separation of everything, and I was physically isolated from all my people, it was very, I had to sustain contact in a way that ultimately did not serve me. And so now I can look back on it and have sort of like, I did try to do this, and and being able to look at that, and I think about all these different incidents that trigger shame for me. I choosing to look at the story another way is reminding myself, like, one thing one of my therapists told me is, telling yourself the story, but keep the tape rolling a little bit longer or a little bit before, like, this editing is not right. you know and when I looked at the editing, I was like, oh, like, I wasn't okay with this, and I did say that, and, like, all of these things sort of get lost in the shame of it all. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. What were out of all of the episodes that you did, because you did a 30-day marathon just
Mhm.
recently, which were
Yes.
the ones that felt like this is actually really good? Or
Good
did any of
question.
them feel good? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I felt one one I liked the most was the episode where I talked about how I forgave myself for not being the perfect survivor. And you know, that process, one, it was a process and a journey, and two, I just really like that because I talked about the new things I came to understand, like, within myself and about the world. And I don't know, I hold it dear to my heart because that's something I wish for every survivor. Everything I offer, like, I'm not even offering suggestions. I'm just saying, this is what I see, this is my journey, and I hope this helps in any type of way. And there are just so many survivors who judge themselves for not being the perfect survivor, and in some ways are cut off from the full range of their power, because it's impossible to own your power if that's your operating system. I know, because that's what it was for me. So, and even I'm still unlearning it. So yeah, that just holds a place in my heart, if only because again, everything I give is an offering, not like a demand or like a to-do list. But if there's anything I hope a survivor could take, it would be how to forgive themselves for not being the perfect survivor.
What would you like to do with the YouTube channel and with some of your work, with your speaking?
Yeah. Um, I love this question. So think I'm starting to get into the place where I'm like, ooh, should I start to interview people? I want to, and this is a little plug. I'm starting to think I should interview people. And
Great
also,
idea.
yes, inspired by the one and only. Um, I also, when I went to Summit, which I was terrified because I was speaking on a panel, and I knew all that fear was not it was valid, but not grounded in any of the evidence in reality I had. Um, but I spoke on the panel. um, went to a sound bath immediately afterwards.
You are
And
terrific, by the way.
oh, thank you. I did that thing and it felt like all the other sessions I attended and all the other speakers, it felt catered to helping me release all this fear around being visible. And I left Summit thinking or having a new sense of what my purpose is in stepping into this space. Because previously, and this is still true, I everything I say is selfishly grounded in myself and my own healing. If I'm saying it, I'm doing it because I need to do it for me. Um, but then I realized, there were so many speakers who were survivors and who had varying levels of success and also varying levels of ownership or of being a survivor, which fascinated me. And I just thought to myself, what would it take for it to be like a culturally safe place for any survivor, any stage in her journey to like own that consciousness enough to feel like this is a collective that I want to pour into and the power that we could have to disrupt things would be a force. And I want my show to help create that culturally safe space for survivors at any stage to own it enough to be a part of this collective force. I think that's my mission. Ah.
That is
Yes.
terrific.
Yeah.
And I should say, for people who are not familiar with it, the Survivor Wealth Summit is such a terrific opportunity for a lot of people to be in an environment where that doesn't have to be the only topic because
Yeah.
everybody there is already has some level of shared experience right
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
So much more could be brought up, and so much of the baggage of just didn't have to be held with you.
Hmm. Yeah. It made imagining a life beyond so much easier. I left feeling like what was meant for me is inevitable. It felt undeniable. And now I just felt like, okay, fine, universe, I'm on your side. I'm on my side. Like I'm just gonna do things to help it along. I used to carry this like undercurrent of not just what if, but really held like the what if not. And I guess that's sort of like a part of the hypervigilance. But after Summit, I can't pinpoint when, but at some point it stopped occurring to me that I couldn't have what I wanted. Like it just, I'm like, what do you mean? So, yeah.
Like if you're surrounded by that much, it's like, wow, so
Hmm.
many people,
Hmm.
we're still here.
Yes.
We got
Yeah.
a lot of living left to do. What do you
Hmm.
want to make happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And such badasses. I was so impressed with so many people. I was
Yes.
like, oh, you are amazing.
Yes. Yes. And in holding that up, it was uncomfortable to deny that I'm amazing too. Like I
You
had to, it was like, universe was like, cut that shit out. We're done with that. Like, you're really trying to hold on to this? So, yeah.
you might be a badass too.
Just possibly.
Oh, but that is terrific. What
Yeah.
would you, what are you seeing going forth? What would you like to be have? You want to start doing interviews? Are you planning on doing talks? Are there other things that we should start looking for with Sable?
Ooh, yes. Well, I definitely am going to start doing interviews in 2026. So, I mean, subscribe to the channel now so you see the content coming up. So, I'm doing a December a holiday self-honoring challenge. That's coming up because it's hard for the general population to honor themselves during that time of year, it's extra hard for survivors. So I have a series planned for that. I'm oh my gosh, I'm even part of me is like blushing slash cringing slash want to hide, but in the top of 2026, I'm also gonna do a mini series about dating after abuse. It's happening.
Ooh,
I know.
big
That's
topic, but
it is a
also,
big
ooh.
yes, yes. So I will be soothing myself through it all. That's gonna be coming in 2026. But I also something that I want to, call in and want to see is like I want to be speaking more. Like I want to speak on other people's platforms. I want to be a keynote speaker because I know I have my lived experience of abuse, but I also have this I think my frame of reference and how I talk about it, I think it deeply resonates and facilitates aha moments among survivors and people who are not. And so I told you my vision. My mission is to create a culturally safer space for survivors to own that. And I want to be speaking in any rooms or stages that can help make that happen. And so that's what I'm calling in for 2026.
Okay, universe, you heard
Yes,
it. You heard
yes,
it here. This is how
yes.
this is going.
Hmm.
I I absolutely see this happening for you. This is
Ah,
just just wonderful. And truly you've got such a great sparkle and a real care when you are speaking. I think people will really resonate with that.
mm,
But essentially bridging the gap is such an important one of the okay, how do you speak as somebody who is a survivor to somebody
mhm.
who isn't coming from that level of experience to make it so that here are some of the shared things we do have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for me, the first step in being able to have that conversation is I have a certain set of like internal boundaries. And the one of the first one is I'm actually not here to speak to anyone who is committed to misunderstanding because those conversations don't generate insight. They just sort of drain. And so I think that's the first step is like I'm not in the room to convince people. I'm in the room if you've first already made the decision and the choice to be open, then I think that is sort of like the first step. And then, in talking to people who and I think that's really important because it sort of models the level of safety and intentionality required for speaking with survivors that I don't think a lot of spaces in our media or society necessarily hold. Um, and, you know, I think something else that makes it helpful to speak to people who aren't survivors is I think in unpacking these myths, for me, and in some of the content that I talk about, it reveals sort of like the psyche and the consciousness of people who just don't get it. Maybe they want to, but they don't. And I recognize that for example, with the myth of the perfect survivor, like that there's a comfort in it. Or like I recognize that, people, there's a projection about survivors that has nothing to do with survivors, that those people that are in the room. And I think the way to talk and connect and build an understanding with those people is to address the projection and know that to some degree, this projection is not about me. This is actually about you and your ish, which we'll talk about. But I think that's sort of like the starting place. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's always an issue that it happens with talking about disease, it happens with talking about accidents, it happens with
Mhm.
talking about any trauma.
Mhm.
It's sort of that, I don't know, superstition that somehow if we treat it elsewhere, that it won't happen to me. That
Yeah.
wouldn't happen to me, man.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
fine. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
know that. You
Yeah.
really don't know that it wouldn't happen to you. And that's, I think, it's such a scary thing for people to acknowledge.
It is.
But
Because then we're talking about a real problem that has real tentacles if this is not true. And that is terrifying. And I get it. That is terrifying. Um, but I think maybe that's sort of the place to start the conversation. And I'm also, outside of being a survivor and speaking and advocating, I'm a learning and development expert. Like I help organizations with change management, and I kind of like approach it the same way of like, what you think is the problem actually isn't the problem. So let's talk about like all the stuff in the room that's getting in the way. And that's kind of how I approach talking about IPV is like, we think we're talking about this, but we're actually not. Let's talk about what we're really talking about and kind of go from there.
and what a great comparison, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, that's part of all kinds of systems change.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that's sort of how like I get when people are resistant to change, like they're resistant to like the danger that they associate with it. And that I think that's why people are resistant to being able to believe survivors and have a different understanding about abuse. And so I think oftentimes I think naming it with um unapologetically, but also with empathy, creates enough space for people to be like, whoa, okay, I'm maybe it opens up a crack that it lets the light in, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I find that that happens a lot with the exhibits that I do, Opulent Mobility, which are about
Mm,
reimagining disability. And every
mm,
time I'll start talking about it, people are like, you mean I might have a disability? Yeah.
mm.
And you will if you're lucky enough to live long enough.
Yeah. Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
that is, these are uncomfortable truths. These
Yes.
are all uncomfortable, but discomfort is part of life.
Yes.
We're not just here to be comfortable all the time.
Yes.
There's not a
Not at
lot of,
all.
it's not a lot of growth there.
No. I mean it just shows why I just see how you use art as a teacher and really as a vehicle for paradigm shifts because you getting people to realize that that's what it is. You're facilitating paradigm shifts fully. And oh, there was something else I was gonna say. Man, I lost my train of thought.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, finding ways that you can speak to people about something they may not want to even think about is tough.
Oh, I remember. Sorry. What you said about discomfort. When I'm facilitating workshops with teams, one of my norms for idea generating spaces is literally discomfort is not harm. Like I say it, like you will feel uncomfortable, and this will not derail our purpose in our conversation. Here, just name it, soothe yourself through it, do what you got to do, but we're not leaving this container because of your discomfort.
It's so important. And I think a skill set that a lot of people don't get
Mm-hmm.
early on, which is unfortunate, but it's like, this is how we do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get to find out uncomfortable things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, if this isn't always a stranger out on the interwebs. This is
Mm-hmm.
probably someone you know.
Yeah.
If it's not happening to you, this is happening to someone you know. I
But
guarantee it.
100%. The numbers, it's impossible for that to not be true.
And that's something that it's very hard for people to acknowledge sometimes. It's like, yeah, this is happening in your place of worship. This is happening in your schools. This is happening in your athletic programs.
Mm-hmm.
And more often with the people, not the trans people who are coming in. It's your
No.
coaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Literally.
but
Yeah.
that that's something to really have these discussions about. I think is so important. I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I received that, and I love that I get to be here to collaborate with you. I've always admired what you're doing, and so I'm sort of like dipping my toes out, and it's so cool to peer out and then be shoulder to shoulder with, a peer like yourself. I'm like you're out in these streets, and I'm sort of, baby giraffing, but owning it, but very much feeling like a baby giraffe along the way.
That is a terrific way to explain it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so easy to get that, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, anytime you're stepping into a new role, and that's
Mhm.
absolutely what you're doing,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
not? I mean, some of it isn't, right? Some of these are skills you've already got.
Yes.
You've already been honing them for years. And so
Yes.
now it's just honing them in a different direction, right?
Yes. It couldn't, that's such a great way to put it because I'm used to public speaking, like I'm used to teaching, I'm an educator, like those are my roots. I facilitated rooms with over 175 people with various levels of leadership, and I'm fine. Like, I get jitters because I care about it, but I have no trouble commanding a room. And so I have all of these great skills, but it is such a different beast. It's such a different application to apply these skills to myself and to and not just to myself, but to my story and to my voice. It's really, really hard. And I'm glad I have these skills to depend on. And I know I have gifts that I feel like create an obligation to just like I feel like I have to do this to honor my gifts, and it is centering myself visibly. Whoa, but that's a five-alarm fire. So, it's taking all the tools, all the leaning on all the supports to just, stand in it and own it because the error of me denying that I have powerful things to say and a powerful take on this lived experience, like the era of denying that is over. And so that's why I just have to, baby giraffe my way through and let it be as awkward and as uncomfortable. I could, do publish, close my laptop and run away. Like, and I'll keep doing that until it's not that. But yeah.
Yep. Keep
Yeah.
doing it until it feels like it's Tuesday.
Right. I look
But
forward to that day.
that would be fabulous.
Yes.
But truthfully, I think I've joked about that, that even with cold calling, like, and I've done this so many, many times, I'm like, is there going to be a time when I don't have my heart in my mouth?
Hmm.
Only
Yeah.
about 10 seconds after I make the call. So, okay, that's
Yeah. Yep.
okay. That's just where it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay. When I listen to other like visible people that I admire and respect, like they don't get to a place where it ever stops feeling that way. They know it gets like that until, action. And so I have it's kind of relieves pressure because it's no longer and it's kind of an extension of my healing like from in this journey because I don't feel antagonistic towards this feeling now. It's a part of me that I need to sit with and hold and soothe and let her know I'm here. We're doing it anyway, but where I'm here, and you know what? We'll pick up those raspberry oat bars and like we'll get your treat, but we're doing this. And if you need to hide for an extra 5 minutes, that's okay. Yeah.
And if you need to hibernate after for a day or four, that's
Yes,
okay too.
that's okay too. Yeah. Yeah.
I, I think that that's so important to talk about, that that's
Mhm.
part of that experience. But
Yeah.
You do have a powerful voice and
Yeah.
powerful things to say. And I don't want you to feel like you have to do this, but if
Hmm.
part of your inside is telling you that, I'm not
Yes.
going to tell your muse that they're wrong.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And
That's not.
yes, I appreciate that. And I like the obligation I feel comes from a deep knowing within my soul. It comes from knowing that I will not have ease within myself if I don't say what I need to say. And it's interesting because, I'm an introvert, and if I'm, which most people don't necessarily know, but I say that because sometimes people perceive me as shy, and I'm not shy. I just won't say anything unless I feel compelled to say something. But if I have that feeling in my soul, I'm gonna say it. And so that's just like the relationship that I have with myself. And that knowing, as I establish more and more safety and really lean into my power and my desire, that knowing is telling me, and I begrudgingly accept this, that a part of my path to accessing what I desire is me visibly owning this. And yeah, it reminds me, I did like this, in the healing journey, I did like a lot of like spiritual healing things. And one of the things that came up was obedience, and I had like instantly, I didn't like that. Like I just had an immediate aversion to that. But then I think in the book it defined obedience as like being obedience to yourself, like being obedient to your inner power, being like, and that I was like, ooh, I like that. Like I want to be obedient to myself, to my higher self, to my power. And that's sort of why I'm here, is out of obedience to her. Like I like the idea of obedience being internally driven. And it's not it's it's kind of, yeah. Like I again, this world has made obedience have such a terrible, people have weaponized it in all the worst ways, but I like the idea of, as someone who, dissociated quite a bit and abandoned herself in an attempt to stay safe, the idea of being obedient to my true self is, there's a lot of power there. And it makes a lot of the being obedient to myself means no longer worried about being nice. And that is something, because I would be afraid of not being nice, but I'm more afraid of not being obedient to myself. And so now I just don't care about niceness. Kindness is different, but nice, mm-mm, mm-mm.
Yeah. And checking who are you being kind to? Are you also
Yes,
being kind to you?
exactly. Exactly.
So powerful.
Hmm.
This is amazing. Can you show the people where they can find you?
Yes, I can. So if you'll have me, I will share my screen. Do.
Please do.
Okay. All right, lean in, girl. Okay. So, this is my website, my online home. Here you can find information about, well, one, me as a speaker, and this is like the home for all of my work as it relates to intimate partner violence. You can find my signature talks here. You can also find my framework, and this is for like how I unpack and tackle like intimate partner violence. And actually, the series I mentioned on YouTube is aligned to this framework. Also, if you want to dive into the YouTube show, here you go. Here's my YouTube channel. You'll see the series. I know the infamous series that we talked about is here. And there's actually a starter playlist which, even though I judge myself for disappearing, I actually said I would do that when I first started. I was like, this is what you could expect. And last but not least, here is in my YouTube show, there's a link to join my newsletter, which will lead you to this form. And if you fill it out, you can join my newsletter and stay in touch.
Awesome. This is terrific. I'm so glad you could do this and you can share your full out healing. I know
Yes.
it's a gradual process for all of us, but I think you're doing a beautiful job. And I'm
Oh,
so, so glad to have met you.
me too. I think the universe was on our side when they were like, we're gonna put them in this space at the same time.
All hail the goddesses. We're good.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Ta da.